going to do, I have notes, but I don't know how to read them. Tonight I will present to you the fascinating history of magic lanterns and the role they played in presenting horror and sci-fi to audiences for, thank you, for 300 years. As well, throughout the presentation, we will have a reenactment of a seance as they occurred in early Victorian times around 1840. This is where charlatans took advantage of naive people using what were called devil lanterns to fool people into believing they were talking to their dead loved ones. You will see the terrible effects this had on the poor woman, played this evening by Valerie Mackenzie, who was a victim of one man's trickery. So what we're going to do is, I have 3 parts to my presentation, and then there will be 2 parts in which the reenactment will occur. So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to move over here so that you can actually see the screen. And the first thing I'm going to do, let's see how this works. Again, I haven't had a chance to. There should be sound coming out of this. We'll see.
Look at that! Look at that! I want to go home. I am I, the great and powerful. Who are you? Who are you?
If you please, I am Dorothy, the small and meek. We've come to ask you.
Silence!
Oh, Jim Crickets.
The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come. Step forward.
All right, some of you might be familiar with this particular scene. It's a, the reason I'm showing you this is because it captures the sort of almost the end of the era of which I'm going to speak. And what you see here is an image that's shown to be basically in smoke. So what's going on here? Well, the important thing to realize is that Dorothy and her friends are looking at that image, and what they're seeing, they're believing that it's real, and they're talking to it, just talking back to them. So you've got an actor somewhere behind there speaking to them. Now, the audience of the day, 1936 is when this was made, I believe, would understand fully what's going on here. Now, this is a little bit more sophisticated, but all you're happening here is the mouth is moving and a little bit of movement of the eyes, and yet they're speaking to this person as if it's real, this image as if it's real. Well, the audience of the day would know that this was basically a magic lantern projection. And what happens is they would say, okay, I know what this is about, because when I go to church, they use magic lanterns there. When I go to school, it was still the main way of showing and educating people things to the whole class was using a magic lantern in the middle of the class. And still, even up until the 1950s, you could still go to theaters where they would use magic lanterns. Now, when you people saw what we were going to present here, and it said the word magic lantern, what did you think of? Like something like Aladdin, the magic lamp, and you rub it, right? So that, oh, Chinese paper lantern, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, that's what comes to our mind. And yet, for 300 years, this was a magic lantern. What you see up here with the little lights on. Those were magic lanterns. Now, they had a whole variety of names. So what I'm going to do here is, since it's 300 years of history where these were used, and they were the precursors to the films that you would go to today, the horror films, I think that anyone who is interested in this whole genre should be quite aware of these things and their history. So that's what we're going to do today. And now, I'm going to find my presentation again. There we are. So, magic lanterns, don't worry, I don't have a whole bunch of slides, there's, as usual, no test afterwards. But it was invented by a fellow, and I say Huygens, I don't know his name is, Christian Huygens, who developed the original telescope. Now, Now, Russell, if you can raise the lights a little bit so people can see this. Now, he was a very famous person. But he was famous because, well, he was a mathematician, but he was also an astronomer. And if you take what is a magic lantern, you can see here what we have is... What you can see here is we have a lens here and a humongous, I love it, lens in here, you see? And we actually have another lens here. So we've got 1, 2, 3 lenses that are going on here. Now what is this? Well, I'll tell you what it is, and I can see you all quite clearly, upside down. It's a telescope. So this is a telescope. So picture Eugene's there with his telescope. Now what happens with a telescope is when you actually point this at something like a white wall, and then you have it pointed at something like the sun. Never look at the sun through a telescope unless there's a filter on it. I always have to say that. If you look at the wall, you'll see a perfect image of the sun on the wall through the eyepiece. That's image projection, it's called. Projection is the key word because he realized, well, if I just change the focus of this a little bit and move it way out here, the image gets bigger and we can see things. So he invented the magic lantern, and that's what we have. So, that's a magic lantern. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. And so that was 1659, 58, something in that range. And it's amazing at that time because within a couple of years, in 1963, a person named John Reeves was making lanterns for sale to the general public. Already he'd gone that far, and they were making magic lantern slides. The diarist, Samuel Pepys, said he bought a lantern from Reeves in August '66. It comes by agreement, Mr. Reeves, bringing me this lantern with pictures on glass to make strange things appear on a wall. Very pretty. And a couple of years later, in '68, it produces effects not only very delightful, but very wonderful, so that spectators not well versed in optics that could see the various apparitions and disappearances, the motions, changes, and actions that may be presented would readily believe them supernatural and miraculous. So what's going on here? Well, you can see early on, we're talking only 9 years after the invention of this, and already they've mastered, using these magic lanterns, how to make things move, appear, disappear, change, and have actions. And what is the subject that they're doing? They're doing supernatural and the miraculous. So you can see where this went. But that's not how things started. Now, if you think back to the internet, I mean, I was involved in the internet at an early stage, and you know, it's a bunch of people sitting around thinking, oh, how are they going to use the internet? And they said, oh, well, they want to get information on it, and they want to communicate, and we'll set up encyclopedias, and won't that be wonderful? Everyone will use it. But of course, how is it used today? Yeah, that is right. Thank you. Thank you. Since you mentioned porn, I didn't put that into my presentation, folks, but porn was a big part of the development of all this, as it is in many media, and it wasn't the common people, it was the aristocrats, and that was one of the main uses that the aristocracy used magic lanterns for, but that's all I'm going to say about that. Anyway. So what they said, so a lot of the early images that were produced were sort of this sort of thing. Okay, you're telling a story here, and in here you have a famous historical moment where this king is crowned and all of this sort of happens. So people would put these up and say, oh, you know, you should know all about your history, and this is what happened, and you have these beautiful hand-drawn pictures. And this is a more modern one, but the other thing is you could do pictures or paintings of faraway places that people could never visit. So that was fine. But people got bored really quickly with that, and things changed. And so what happened is we ended up with this. So this is an early slide. This is I'll show you my original in a few minutes. But this is what they tended to create very early on. This particular slide is well over 200 years old. And so what we hear is, obviously, this is not a human. What is it? It's an angel or a demon or a ghost? I don't know. But the critical characteristics of it are that it's all black around it. And as you will see in our reenactment, that's very important because what that does is brings out the actual spirit here and makes it very easy for the group to see. And you can shine it on a screen, but you can also shine it on a wall and make it go across the ceiling and that sort of thing. So that's why they designed them this way. Now, the big thing, the people who were showing these images wanted the people to believe that they were real. And since people really didn't know anything about optics or light or anything else, and they'd never experienced anything like this before, they believed that this thing was real. But they added other aspects to it to make it work. So for example, picture that wall over there, okay? And then what happens, you see this going across it. And you've never experienced anything like this before. Now, you'd be under your seats by now. Basically, that's where you would be, because you would be terrified of this. And of course, this is, you know, people have always loved to be terrified forever, and are willing to pay big bucks to get terrified. So that's what happens here. So this, by the way, is what my original looks like. You can see the center part still looks pretty good because it's white. The black is all chipped off because it absorbs the heat. And the more illumination you need, in other words, the bigger the audience, the bigger the picture, the more there's a direct relationship between the degree of illumination and the degree of heat. So when these were used for showing to large crowds, this would very quickly occur, and they would get all tracked like that. So what could they do with it? Well, what they could do was create motion. And so here we have a ghost talking. Oops. So, yeah. Oh, there. You see her talking there? Isn't that amazing? Well, I mean, okay, you're a sophisticated audience. But to the uninitiated, just seeing her mouth move was enough. You saw in The Wizard of Oz, all they did was move the mouth. And poor Dorothy believed that that was a wizard. And then, not only that, oops, sorry, you could have her waving her arm and talking. So all these things are possible, and it doesn't take much to accomplish that. But it did take advances in the use of these magic lanterns, because a single lantern can't do that. So they developed multiple lanterns that could create images back and forth, and therefore create motion. So they became very sophisticated very quickly. And you could use these to create whole acts and scenes of people interacting with each other. So, the early ones looked like this, very basic. Being the 1800s, they got very ornate, particularly in France. And this one should look familiar to you. If you look right over here, you've got one that's virtually identical to that. And this one was the first one I purchased. I purchased it in 1984 in Bath, England, and it just had come out of a children's museum where it had been in operation for 100 years. And it had been used before that. But the fancy ones look like this. And you can see this. Now, why did I buy this? Why do I like this? Well, it has two things that I think probably other people in this room probably share this fetish with me. It has lenses. I love lenses. But most importantly, it has brass. Anyone else here like brass? Yes. Yeah, brass. Anyway, so I collect a lot of brass. Anyway, so that is my magic lanterns. You can see that this is a typical one. It has a gas light in it, and this would be used by children if they had children-sized slides. I'll tell you about the slides in the second half of our little presentation. So, the second chapter will be Phantasmagoria, Horror of the Masses. But now we're going to start with our little reenactment of a seance. So I have to first sort of give you a little background. Seances that utilize devil lanterns were popular in Victorian times. The majority of people still do not understand that image was generated by lantern, and they believed the image on the screen was real. And I have to say, even if they didn't believe it was real, they still allowed themselves to get scared a lot. However, to enhance the experience, the victim was asked to fast for at least 24 hours prior to the seance. And upon arrival, was given a mixture of alcohol and opium. On an empty stomach. And some of them were 3 days they were required to fast. Okay, so this was a very tricky part of the preparation, as too little would not have the desired effect, while too much would render the person unconscious. And then, as many of you may be aware or have witnessed, consumption of alcohol and drugs can often have unanticipated effects on people's personality and behavior. We will be reenacting a typical seance so that you can see for yourself how the magic lanterns could be so effective in creating the illusion of summoning the dead from the other world. You will have to imagine a reception room right in this area right here, and an inner chamber that can be darkened over here. So we'll have to darken the whole room. After consuming some of the potion and a suitable interval, while the alcohol mixture takes effect, the bereaved relative is shown into the room and asked to stand on that platform. The platform has 2 metal plates on the handrails that are hooked up to an electrical generator, so that the current flows up one arm and down the other, adding to the victim's sensations and disorientation. Can you believe it?
They don't kill anyone.
I know. Well, I came close several times. So I'm going to tell you more about that in my presentation. But this is actually what they did, and some of them were way worse than this. And normally the lanternist would be behind the floating screen, out of sight, but we do not have that much room, so that he will be operating the lantern with front projection rather than rear projection. So this will allow you to see how the whole thing operates, which is good, but you're going to have to use your imagination to assume that he is not there, but he's actually on the other side. Okay? Normally, by the way, there will be 2 or 3 lanternists working as many as 6 lanterns simultaneously to create the desired effects. So you'll have to imagine that you would see more special effects during the seance than we can present tonight. Now, one Miss Brody, a woman living here in London in 1840, culturally, during this time, there's a transition away from rationalism of the Georgian period towards romanticism and mysticism with regard to religion, social values, and arts in the early Victorian period. Women in those days behaved to a strict set of social codes and were only schooled until the age of 13, as too much education was deemed to damage their delicate brain, the delicate brain of the female. Miss Brody has recently lost her mother and wants to ask her some critical questions. She has therefore hired the services of Professor Bogas to conduct a seance so that she can converse with her dear departed mother. Professor Bogas has a reputation for using the latest scientific devices to reach the dead. However, he, like many charlatans, in his profession, is a charlatan and a cad. So in preparation for this event, the professor has made images of her mother and has learned about the questions so that he has answers that he can provide during the seance.
Oh, good morning, Professor.
Good morning, and how are you today?
Well, I can tell you, Professor, I'm feeling very poorly, having not eaten for 24 hours. I'm feeling weak and lightheaded. Are you quite sure that this is all worthwhile?
Oh, yes.
As I told you, I simply must speak to dear Mommy about the dog. And, well, I truly hope this isn't any sort of flim-flam.
Oh, I can assure you this is no flim-flam. We base our seances on the latest scientific theory. And we have excellent new equipment which will ensure that we can find your mother.
Well, pray do not try to fill my head with your scientific mumbo-jumbo. The mind of a lady is far too delicate and refined for that sort of thing.
Well, we will prepare your mind so that you can see your mother and hear her. So to do that, we have a special potion for you. Yes, which will help you do that. And here it is. But you must be very careful. You must only drink 1/3 of what's in this glass. You see that?
Ooh, it smells funny. There's not strong liquor in it.
Oh,
I've strong alcohol in it, and I certainly do not intend to start now. A woman of my standing does not drink strong liquor.
Oh, I can assure you, madame, that this drink will only help you focus on seeing your mother. Up. I think that's about right. Now, I would like you to sit down here. Sit down.
Yes.
Now, you sit there while it takes effect, okay? And I'll be back in just a few minutes. You can read some magazines. All right. So while the formula is taking effect with Miss Brody here, we'll have our second talk now. So necromantic magic. What happened is that there 100 years, for the first 100 years, the magic lanterns had very, very low light power, and so they were used mainly by people in small crowds or small groups, and as I showed you, just those kind of special images. However, what happened is there was considerable improvement in the technology. So here we have a typical Victorian situation. A bad boy is stealing eggs from a tree. Now what happens to bad boys who steal eggs from a tree? They die! Yes, so he's being swept away here. Now the beauty of this is we can go back in, and then he can die again. And die! Well, you get the idea. So this is all the motion that's going on. You see that? So this was very clever. Now, this is the actual slide, and I'm sorry, you probably can't see that. And you can see it, all it is moving, there's a black spot on the back, and we're just moving this back and forth. And you could actually do this. Now, if you think of the first films, they were only, 12 frames per second. And I could almost get that fast doing this, but why would I? But point is that you can see how effective that is. And I'm just showing you up here. Here we have another one, and this fellow, it seems that in these days, climbing trees, young fellows climbing trees got into trouble a lot, and they were featured in these. So here he is, swinging back and forth. Well, what really is happening is I'm moving this back and forth. And that's how they created. So these were this was quite an advancement, and so there was an advancement in the slide making, and also they got very sophisticated. So what would happen is you got eye movement and different, so you can see here we have the eyes are moving around and so on. So these images became very believable to the people, and of course the artists got very good at creating these sorts of things. Now, you've heard the expression, blow it out your arse. Well, these guys took it to a whole new level. So here we have this poor gentleman, and he's obviously suffering. Well, what goes out, what goes in can go out too. So anyway, they obviously had a sense of humor in those days as well. But so there was quite a development of slides and a high degree of sophistication going on here. Now, then what happened is the technology advanced. So the lanterns themselves were very basic. There was a chamber, lenses, place to hold the slides. That didn't change for almost 300 years. But what became very sophisticated was the ability to illuminate it. So they had candles, gas lamps, and sunlight up to about 1790 when the argon lamp came on, and that increased it to 7 to 10 candles. Now what that meant is you could have an audience in a very dark place like a crypt. So people started developing shows that took place at crypts. And then limelight came along, which meant you could show it to hundreds of people, and finally the electric arc lamp, you could show to thousands of people. So as these changed, people saw the opportunity to create mass media kinds of shows, and that's what happened. Now, there's three big names, and I have misplaced my slides. I may have to fake it. Look at that. Well, there you go. It's often, I was a professor for 36 years, and kids would drop their cue cards on the floor, and I would say, okay, just leave them there. Your presentation will be much better without them. So that's what we're going to do here. The first guy to really develop the horror genre was a fellow named Schopfer. And he was in Leipzig, and he had a coffee shop there, but it was going broke. And so he said, I've got to find some way to make money. And what he did is he converted his billiards room into a seance room. And he's the guy that developed most of what we're going to do here tonight. He made people fast for 3 days. He gave them alcohol. He had actors. He used smoke. He used loud noises and several magic lanterns. And people would go in. And for 15 years or so, he became very famous and quite rich putting on these shows. And but again, small audiences, but still very, very effective. Now, the interesting part is, one of his shows, he said to the people, because he said to one of the people, okay, tonight we have a special show. What's going to happen is I'm going to shoot myself, and then I'm going to bring myself back into existence. And he shot himself. The second part didn't happen. He died. That was in 1774. Now, it so happens, though, prior to that, in his audience, he had Philippe Lieber, I can't remember his name. That's just sad, I lost my notes. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And this fella, then, what happened is the new argon lamp came along. He was able to put on shows in the crypt. And so he did that in Paris, and it became a huge hit. Now the thing is, and here's an actual contemporary painting of that. Now the thing is that he became so famous, but he made the mistake during the French Revolution of supposedly raising King Louis XIV. And of course the revolutionaries didn't like that, so he was arrested. So he managed to get away from there, went to London, where he set up shop in the Lyceum Theatre with Madame Tussaud, and put on shows very successfully for years after that. But the one person most famously remembered was a fellow named Robertson, and he put on, the previous fellow was known as the father of phantasmagorical shows, but the true person who was really famous for it was this Belgian fellow named Robertson. And here's a contemporary photograph, sorry, not photograph, a painting of what happened. You can see people here on the ground, people are running away, other people are waving their swords at these images. It was quite the show and very believable by people. And so this went on, and basically these people cover about another 100-year span, and they weren't the only ones doing it. So these kind of shows became very, very popular. And these images that you see here, I'm sorry, I shouldn't point at my screen. These images that are up here, you can see, were being shown all through, and there was a huge cast of people working on this to make people believe it. And he was actually a physicist and a lecturer at the university, and he had invented a lot of things, and that's it. So I'm going to stop there. And so basically that covers the next 100 years. All of these magic lanterns were used to scare people, became very popular, and were the precursor to modern horror shows. Now, I'm going to see how Miss Brody feels over here. And how do you feel, Miss Brody? Miss Brody?
I don't like how you comb your hair.
Are you dizzy? Can you stand?
What's that man doing over there?
Oh.
Oh, thank you. Oh, you are strong.
Yeah, thank you. we must go over to this room over here. Over here.
Where are you taking?
Right over here. Yeah. This is a seance room. Yes. And it is a very special room. It is designed with special materials in the wall, so that if we inadvertently bring back demons from the other world,
Demons? You didn't say anything about demons.
don't worry, don't worry. We have a system here that will protect you. Oh yes, yes. You see this over here? This system, if you would get on there and stay on it, then you'll be safe from the demons. So you walk over. Yes, 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 yes. You'll be safe. You'll be safe. That's it. Come on up here. You'll be safe. All right. I want you to put one hand here. That's it. And the other hand here. Okay? Okay? Relax. Okay. Are you ready?
No.
All right, here we go. It's okay. Put your hand here. I'll hold your hand, okay? Here we go. Miss Brody, it's only a mild current. It won't hurt you. But what it will do is the current will create a glow and your mother will be able to see you. Okay? So you keep holding on to those. All right. Miss Mildred Brody, I summon you!
Yes, come over, Mommy. Come to us.
Miss Brody! Miss Mildred Brody! I summon you! Nothing's happening. Okay, we have Plan B. Plan B. Now, I told you I had inventions that will help us summon these people. This is my latest and greatest invention.
Can I look?
Further. Okay. This is my brain wave channeler. And it works very similar to light waves, except it works with brain waves. And what happens is the brain waves come in here. Are you paying attention? The brain waves come in here. They're channeled through here, and they come out here, and they go to you. And your power, your brain power will increase. So therefore, you will be able to summon your mother, or help me to summon her mother. But in order for this to work, I need a lot of brain power. And the brain power has to come from very intelligent people. Yes, now fortunately, I brought together a large group of very intelligent people. Okay? And they are going to supply the brain power. Oh, good. Yes, yes. All right. So now the only problem is that the brain power wave must be at very high amplitude. Okay, right up there. And that means that everyone has to be in sync. Now the way this works is you see this, there's a target here, and you have to look at the target and then shake your brain waves towards it. Okay? It works like this. Okay? You get the idea? Thank you. Now, we all have to work together, so we're going to have a little bit of music to help you along. Okay? All right. So, all right. You're all, that's it. You're doing it. You're doing good. You don't look stupid at all. Oh, all right. Here we go. Keep going. Here we go. Oh. Don't stop! You're doing it!
What's happening to me? That's enough! That's enough! Please stop! Please stop! Did you know that the square of the hypotenuse following the triangle is equal to the sum of the square of the other two sides of the triangle? Yes, but did you know that the atomic number of uranium is 92?
I did not. How did you know that?
Brain power, Professor. Brain power!
Well, in that case, Ms. Brody, I want you to use that brain power, and we will summon your mother. Okay? What you need to do is concentrate on the light. Concentrate on the light. Okay? I'm going to summon your mother now. You going to work with me? Okay. I summon you, Mrs. Mildred Brody! I summon you, Mrs. Mildred Brody!
I see something! It's light. It's getting closer. It's coming toward me. What is that? What?
Stay on the platform! You'll be safe! Stay on the platform! Stay there! Okay. Be gone, demon! Be gone, demon! That's okay. It's okay. Now, I can see what's happening here is you don't have a firm image of your mother in your mind. So you must have a firm image of, when you think of your mother, what do you think of? What kind of image comes to your mind? You ready? Okay. Okay, now, I summon you, Mrs. Brody!
Yes, Mommy!
I summon you, Mrs. Brody!
It's getting closer. It's different this time.
Is that your mother?
That's not my mother. You make it go away. It's not my mother.
Sure.
Oh,
Be gone, demon! Be gone, demon! All right. At this point, the professor knows from experience that he has to truly frighten her if she's going to believe that, in fact, that's her mother that she sees. So he decides to use his most frightening image, something he knows that will truly, truly terrify her.
we're going to try again.
We are. One more time. I summon you, Mrs. Brody! I summon you, Mrs. Brody! It's coming! Looks like her!
Who?
All right.
Everyone,
Everyone, right in here.
right here. Yes.
Right here.
I'm feeling that.
I summon you!
No, don't stop, that's enough, that's enough. Right, now, yes.
I summon you,
Summon
Mrs.
her.
Brody!
There's another light.
I summon you, Mrs. Brody!
Oh, it's beautiful this time. Oh, it's beautiful. Is that you, Mummy?
Is that you, Catherine?
Oh,
Where are you?
oh,
Where am I?
oh, can you see me, Mummy? I'm right here. Is that you, Mummy? You sound very different.
Well, how do you think you would sound after you'd been dead for a month?
Oh, yes, of course.
I have important questions for you. How many people came to my funeral? Is your father seeing someone else?
now, Mummy, well, 30 people came to your funeral, and it was lovely. It was so sad. Everyone cried. Well, 30. About Father. Does it count if you was already seeing another woman before you passed over?
Oh, Father, such a disappointment to me.
But Mummy, I've come such a long way. I've been through quite a bit, and so I do have some questions for you.
Yes?
Yes, well, it's about the dog. He keeps digging up the nasturtiums.
The nasturtiums?
Yes, I don't think he's looking for you. I think that you've hidden something there.
No.
Why is he digging, Mummy?
It's somewhere else.
What is somewhere else? Why didn't you tell me before you passed over?
Well, I just didn't see that horse and carriage coming.
Yes, of course,
Must
Mummy.
be so unexpected.
I'm so sorry. I do miss you.
Oh, I miss you so.
Oh, I miss you.
Oh, well, and that is our reenactment of a seance that would have taken place about 1840. So I'm going to have the third part of my presentation, which is the use of magic lanterns as they would have been used in the latter part of that century. One of the things you would see here is that a lot of slides were developed for children, and here you can see that they don't make any sense, of course, but kids when you're young, that's the sort of thing that happens. And so, they would be used in these relatively small slide projectors over here, and this was a popular gift to give at Christmas, but a little late for that now. The other thing is people would go to large theaters, and in the late 1800s, musicians made money by selling sheet music. And so the main way to get people to buy sheet music was for them to go somewhere and then actually experience that. So they'd go to theaters, they'd put these up, there'd be a chorus, there'd be some people singing, and there'd be music. And so this is the kind of thing, and so people would buy this at the time.
Drink it. Drink it. Drink it. Drink it. Drink
Perfect role model for me. So what happened is that these often people would paint pictures based upon what was described, not what they'd actually seen. And so these often didn't at all represent what was in reality, what you'd find in Africa, for example. And of course, being Queen Victoria's time, there was always all kinds of pictures of Queen Victoria.
Excuse me, Professor?
Yeah.
What are these?
Oh, now those are my scientific instruments, and I'm developing all kinds of new technologies. But, please, you can look at them, but don't break them. Savoyards, you can see one here with a magic lantern on his back, and his little friend here with one, and he's got a whole box of slides who go from town to town and give presentations. Now this is very interesting because this is a typical Victorian family with their magic lantern. What you see is mom and dad, 9 children, and they're watching a typical entertaining show. And what does that show? It shows a devil with a baby on the trident. I don't know about those people, but you know, this was it. And if you doubt me for a minute that this was not a horror show, then this is what happened. Now, here we are. Has anyone seen the Wild Wild West movie by any chance? Okay. Now, when you watched that movie, do you remember seeing the magic lantern in it? Did you know what it was? No. All you saw was this clever device and him shining the light through the eyes of the dead general. No, scientist, sorry. It's a scientist, that's right. But this is a magic lantern. And so it's sort of come full circle here, because at the beginning, the audience knew what that image was in The Wizard of Oz. Most of you, when you saw this, had no idea what this was about. now you do, because you've seen this presentation. You know that this is a magic lantern. When this opens up, there's a light in there. You've got 3 lenses, and normally you don't have a dead head in front of it. So that's what's going on. So now,
Hello, everyone. He's sorting out his things over there. I think something's amiss, don't you? I think that the professor, the good professor, has taken advantage of me. He should be taught a lesson. But I've never, how do you say it, kicked ass before. I think his ass should be kicked, the way he goes about treating people, especially innocent women. What do you think? Should we teach him a lesson? Should we kick his ass? 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 All right, good. Okay, I think I have an idea. Professor?
yes,
May I use the water closet?
by all means, go ahead.
Thank you.
So music, you know, when it's combined with slides, of course, really would add to the entertainment value. So we have a little set of slides here. Some music has been set to. This is the British winning the Golden Ball.
a lesson.
I do?
Yeah, and I'm gonna teach it.
Huh. Second.
You are gonna learn.
Just a second.
That's not a gun. That's a gun. I'm not gonna shoot you, but I am gonna teach you a lesson. I can learn what I want, I can wear what I want, and I can be